Welcome to the Industry Edge podcast, where we talk with leaders working in and for some of the hardest working industries, such as manufacturing, distribution, construction, and more. This episode is brought to you by K&C Marketing. K&C is a full-service marketing agency that helps B2B industrial companies grow their brand and increase sales. They serve as either a fully outsourced marketing partner or supplement in-house marketing teams. To learn more about K&C's brand development, marketing, and website design services, visit kncmarketingagency.com. Now, joining us today, I have Randy Rozema, the Director of Acoustics and Vibration and a principal at ACS. With over 20 years of experience, Randy is an expert in acoustics and vibration field measurements and studies, design of acoustic and vibration testing facilities, and specification of products for solving noise and vibration problems in automotive, commercial engine and vehicle markets, white goods, R&D, medical research labs, and many other industries. Randy is an active member of Society of Automotive Engineers and an NVH committee member, executive board member of the Institute of Noise Control Engineering, who attained his board certification in December of 2020. You are a busy guy. Welcome to the show, Randy. Thanks so much for coming on today. Appreciate you
Thank
being
you for
here.
having me.
Awesome. Well, first off, I have to address you have been with the company for almost 20 years, right? 18 years, I think, is what I saw there.
Just
What
shy of 19.
There you go. That's a big accomplishment. And what is it about ACS that's made you stay all these years? I feel like you don't really see people that have been with companies that long anymore as often. What has made you stick with ACS this whole time? They must be pretty great.
Yeah, so when I started with ACS, small organization that was very flexible, nimble, and worked primarily in the space of designing and building technically complex facilities. And over the years, it's grown to that we still do technically complex facility design and construction, but as well, we now do the design and fabrication of specialty test equipment that can't be purchased off of the open market. And part of what draws engineers to the organization is just the engineering challenges, being on the cutting edge of R&D facilities, as well as the variety of project opportunities. I mean, we're talking projects that range anywhere from a engine development test cell to a full vehicle test cell on up to, say, aerospace engine or aerospace engine component testing. And again, re-emphasizing right on that cutting edge of technology, so you're always engaged in something that's new and exciting.
That's awesome. So it sounds like I am not an engineer by trade. Obviously, I'm in marketing, so very different, but it sounds like engineers want something different. They want to try new things all the time and don't want to get into some redundancies. So being able
Right.
to have the opportunity to work on different things is exciting for y'all. It sounds like that's awesome. I love that. What do you feel like are two of the biggest NVH challenges that automakers face when when they're trying to develop quieter electric vehicles?
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the development phase, there's the historic way to do it, which would be we're going to build some prototypes, go out, test them, collect data, have this mountain of data to process and to pour through, so to say. And the evolution of engineering today and the advancements in digital development is allowing now these days the ability to go collect a small pocket of data and, dare I say it, calibrate a digital model and be able to do simulation work and not have to consistently build prototypes and go out and do physical tests, but rather be able to set up virtual tests on your computer and simulate in a real world environment in a controlled space.
Awesome. And so that I feel like from that, like just from an efficiency standpoint, like being able to bring it digital versus having to go out and do those physical prototyping, like you guys are able to take on probably a lot more projects and do a lot more different types of testing and different things like that, right?
Right. So when you get into that digital space, now you have the ability to run simulation in parallel and
Mhm.
kind of parallel process. But at the same token, there is still that need to go out and collect that real data to make sure that that model is calibrated.
Mm-hmm.
And the intrigue to it is as as the digital model continues to get refined further and further, the testing requirements for the real world get more and more stringent as well. So you have this driving of new design criteria for facilities.
Okay. Awesome. I love that. How do you feel like ACS approaches the design and construction of like cutting edge testing facilities? So what sets you guys apart from other people that might be doing what you're doing?
Yeah, one of the big differentiators that we have is the way that we approach product projects. It's understanding the unit under test as well as the testing that the client is going to do, and then taking what I'll call a inside out approach, meaning I know how physically large a product under test is. I know what parameters that product needs to be tested under. I know what data needs to be collected. And at the end of the day, to the client, the quality data is what they want out of the project.
Mm-hmm.
I can then take all of that information and I can right size the test cell or the test space, and then we look at putting the building around that. So what we're really doing is we're not doing a conventional project where, you know, people would otherwise think, oh, I need to build a building that's, say, 40,000 square feet without understanding how much test space needs to be in it. We
Mm-hmm.
go the other way and say we need 25,000 square feet of test space, and we're going to build the building to fit that, along with however many people are going to be working in the facility. So that's really a big differentiator for us, along with having a technical staff here that understands the unit under test and that data.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's so interesting because a lot of the clients that we work with, it's like, yeah, you're trying to take a space and then figure out a solution and system and develop like that can fit within the four walls that you're working within.
Right.
But you guys kind of reverse engineer that if you would and look at it
Yep.
from here's the solution that we know is the answer to the problem. How do we build the building around it to support that? That's really, really cool.
Absolutely.
I love that. Can you share a real world example of a complex NVH testing facility project that you guys have worked on and the challenges that you've helped solve? Like one that you're like, that project was awesome and that really comes to mind for you?
I actually have two examples of that. One will get in the Wayback Machine to one of the first projects I worked on, which at the time was a cutting edge acoustic test center. And the facility was designed to test on highway trucks, so semis, but additionally have adjacent testing spaces that could do component test as well. And what the company was focused on is truck interior noise, but they still had some requirements for vehicle exterior noise as well. And so what you end up with is needing to be able to put a semi truck inside of a test cell, put it onto a chassis dynamometer so you can drive it as if it's on the highway, and be able to instrument it and collect acoustic data so the background noise becomes very critical, because if the background noise isn't low enough, the data you collect from an acoustic perspective is basically just the room noise, not the article under test.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big challenges with that project was getting enough airflow through that room to keep the vehicle cool while it was running a test that could last an hour or more in duration.
Mm-hmm.
So we devised and developed a I'll call it a underground tunnel system, where the air handling unit actually dumped the air into a roughly 10-foot square cross-section tunnel and brought it to the front of the room. And then we delivered that to the front of the vehicle through a nozzle that was custom designed to reduce the aerodynamic noise, but also focus that air to the appropriate locations to cool the engine, as well as send cooling air under the vehicle to get the tires cool on that dyno. Because without cooling the dyno interface, you're going to run into a situation where the tires get hot, get sticky, and start to whine and make tire noise, which isn't what they were desiring either.
Mm-hmm.
So the big challenge there was not only getting that test cell operational, but they wanted the other three component test rooms to be able to test simultaneously with running a truck test.
So you had to
So
have how
now,
many of
I'm
them?
sorry.
So you had how many of them running at the same
So
time?
there were four test spaces
Okay.
that they wanted to all use simultaneously, and the function of those spaces were not all the same. So the other three for component tests were much smaller rooms. They were bringing in, call it actuators or door panels or things of that nature. So components of vehicles, if you will, and doing tests. And then a lot of the product they were developing was noise dampening. So they had a room that would just measure the characteristics of that dampening product. And
Okay.
so you have one room that's really loud with an on-highway truck driving along, and you have three rooms next to it that are whisper quiet because they're characterizing material properties.
That's so
So
cool. So that was a very dynamic project. That does sound really fun to work on. You said you had another one that came to mind too. What's
I
that
do.
one?
We had another project that they had an existing acoustic lab, and it was in a separate building from engineering. And they wanted to consolidate their acoustic, vibration, and fatigue testing all into one lab space and have it be moved near their engineering offices. The problem or the challenge statement is how can I move this into what is currently a manufacturing space? And how can I achieve the appropriate sized acoustic rooms within the footprint that's available? And in that project, some of the challenges we ran into were the head height of the building was not high enough to allow the sound room to be built to its proper size. So rather than being creative with the test space, knowing what our test space parameters needed to be, we raised the roof of the building by 3 feet in the middle of the building. So one whole bay of the building, we took the roof off, raised it up, built our acoustic enclosure, and then put the roof back on.
Well, there you go. You didn't
And
let the roof, you raised the roof literally. I had to say it.
quite
I'm
literally.
all thinking of it. You guys totally raised the roof on that one. Love
And
it.
then again, I mentioned we were in a manufacturing space now. 400 feet from this lab space were 550-ton presses that were stamping out parts for their manufacturing process and having to come up with creative ways to damp the vibration and the noise from those machines was another aspect of the challenge associated with that project.
Ooh, that's so cool. Okay, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when somebody was like, what if we just take the roof off and go up instead? Who was the one that suggested it? Was it you or what did everybody think when that came up?
I don't I don't exactly remember who it was that recommended it, but it did cause pause in the room when it was suggested.
I bet. We're like, I don't know. That's it. But we're not
So,
going to compromise on not if we know that that's what we're not going to compromise.
right.
That's what that tells me about you guys. So
Yep.
love that. What should automakers and researchers consider when they're planning or upgrading a testing, like an NVH testing facility to future-proof their operations? Like, what are those things that you think that they should be thinking about?
I think that depends a little bit and varies by industry.
Mhm.
We, in addition to doing work in the automotive and aerospace, do a little bit of work in white goods, which would be classified as household or home products.
Mhm.
And in that industry, when they future proof, they look to what are they going to do or have as a product, say 5, 10, or 15 years out. And they recognize that a lot of their sound or vibration requirements are going to be governmental or industry driven. It's not internally driven by them themselves.
Mhm.
And so, an example, we did a project, again, building a sound lab, where they took today's product and said, we believe within the next 10 years, we have to have this product be at least 10 decibels quieter than today. So therefore, they said benchmark today, take X amount off, and that became the new target, if you will.
Hmm.
And in a similar manner, you have advancements in materials and things like that. So you have products that are going to change sizes, change shape, change applicability.
Hmm.
So if you look at it, say from the automotive and or aerospace side, they need to be thinking about, hey, I have something right now that is gasoline driven. I have internal combustion noise. I have transmission noise. I have all of these sources of noise that are currently covering up some of the undesirable sounds that may otherwise come and be present as we get more into electrification, EVs, all of those, call them interior noises, are now becoming prominent and recognized where they hadn't previously. So, in a similar vein, these people should be thinking forward, or these industries should be thinking forward to, okay, what might the next big thing look like? And what do I need to do from a packaging or a testing perspective to quantify the sound and reduce what those parameters are going to be?
Okay. What do you feel like those, the ones not like you said, white goods, those kinds of industries, are they typically coming to y'all like for like, hey, we have this problem, or is it you guys are kind of meeting them where they're at and like guiding them through, or do they kind of have a really good understanding of what they need to do already and they need somebody to execute?
It depends on the customer.
Yeah.
We've experienced it both ways. We have one customer that is a global entity that understands what their test requirements are. They
Hmm.
understand what the governing agencies are and what where that is going because they have people that participate in the steering committees, and so they have a fresh look ahead of everybody else in their industry to know what they need to do to be compliant. We
Hmm.
have other customers who they know that they want to build product X. They know that today's standards for product X are driven by, say, two, maybe three government agencies, but they don't know how to get to the point where they are measuring to those standards or to those requirements.
Okay. That makes
So it definitely is a spectrum, if you will, of clients.
okay. That makes sense. So shifting gears just a little bit, if somebody was, an engineer or like really interested in the work that you are doing, what piece of advice, like this, would you give them? Like from your experience, you've been with the company 20 years, what piece of advice would you give kind of a new emerging engineer that's wanting to get into this space?
For new engineers that come into the company, the first piece of advice is active listening and asking questions.
Hmm.
Don't assume that you have the answer, but ask for clarity if you don't understand.
Yep.
And that will definitely help drive their career path to success.
I love that. That's across all, I'm like, you don't be afraid to ask questions. I feel like,
Yep,
especially when you feel like you got to have all the answers, you got to be the smartest one in the room. Like, nope, if you don't ask the question, then that's on you. And if you're doing it wrong, then you'd rather get it right from the jump. So I love
right.
that. I love that. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should be asking you or that you would like to share with us?
Nothing that really comes to the forefront. I think we've touched on a lot of key features or functions relative to
Yeah.
the approach to a project, what drives the requirements, and really it just comes down to teamwork and figuring out solutions to continue to move forward and advance the industries.
Awesome. It sounds like you guys are a great partner for all of your customers and you make it, in such a complex world that you guys are operating in, that you make it a really easy customer experience from what it sounds like.